The Struggle for Education by Booker T. Washington is one of my favorite stories that I've read this semester because it shows that Booker T. Washington was determined to get an education from a college. He walked 500 miles. I know times are different now that we have transportation is easier for us to get to college to receive one, but that right there shows that any student can do it. So I feel like if he can do it, then any other college student can get it. Not every student comes from the same background to get to where they're at now, attending a college. I love the fact that he's at a HBCU or he attended an HBCU. He was exposed to new things, like a new environment, like every other college student around the country that goes to a school that's not from that area. He didn't have much help from anyone. He struggled financially, and I feel like that right there creates dignity and your gratitude. It shows that you're dedicated to actually get a degree because you don't have the support from anyone. So you have to basically get it on your own. Also, the Escape of Clotel is one of my favorite stories as well. It represents freedom, and that I feel like is important to African American history in my perspective, because if it wasn't for them, we as African Americans wouldn't be where we're at now today. It also shows that many slaves had knowledge of what was going on around them. It also shows that not all slaves were ignorant, and I like that. And I also like the fact that throughout the story, in one part of the story, it shows where the man, a black man, is proving a white man wrong, and the white man is basically admitting to it. One aspect that I believe that Larry Neal might believe that needs to be destroyed is the fact that me being a young black male in America, sometimes I fear that when I get in my car to go to work and to school or just commuting around Houston or anywhere I go, that it's a possibility that I might not come home, that I could end up in the news headlines behind me being pulled over and beaten or killed by local police. I fear when I see the police get behind me sometimes because it's happened to other young black males in America, like Trayvon Martin, Austin Sterling, etc. So I feel like that should be destroyed because they're killing our black men in America.
So, Mrs. Milton, how do you feel about African American literature? What is your knowledge?
Not what it should be. But I feel like African American literature is something that shouldn't just be for African Americans. A lot of pieces by African Americans are beneficial and enlightening to all people. So, of course, it's something that many people aren't interested in, but I think that they should be interested in, and will find that it's enjoyable reading for all people. So, um, the African American literature that I have read, I've enjoyed. The classes that I've taken, I've enjoyed, and I would encourage anyone else to do the same.
Okay. How do you feel about them treating us colored folks from the Jim Crow era to the 1960s to the ending of it?
Well, the way that African Americans were treated during that time, of course, was unfortunate. It's a just another stain in American history, but you can see how we've grown, how we continue to grow. It's something that we learn from, and not just African Americans, but society as a whole, to see that that forced segregation didn't benefit anyone, and it only created a separation that we still see today that we're still fighting to try to get away from. So definitely unfortunate, but something that we can all learn from, and hopefully something that we won't repeat anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. Professor, how do you feel about African American literature, the class?
The class, I think it's an exceptionally important course. Um, I believe that understanding Black literature, being familiar with those who wrote Black literature, who write Black literature, is critically important. My favorite would be Zora Neale Hurston, and I'm excited because although she has been dead for a number of years, um, a new work of hers, well, a work of hers is being newly released tomorrow, and I'm really excited about that. And it's about the last African cargo ship carrying slaves that was brought into Alabama, so probably the port of Mobile, but brought into Atlanta, Alabama. The ship was called the Clotilda. I want to believe that's the name of it. And she interviews a slave who was a part of that cargo ship. So that story is important. It's critical to understand what that time, what that experience was like. And now we as readers can experience that. That's what I love about literature, that it takes you on a journey. Books take you, books take you on journeys that can teach you so much about life. Books are your first passports. So I find Black literature very important, and I'm very excited to read Zora Neale Hurston's new book on tomorrow.
So, Mr. Tyler, how are you doing today?
Doing fine. How are you?
I'm fine. How do you feel about African American literature, and what's your knowledge?
How do I feel about African American literature? You mean the class?
Mm-hmm.
It's something everybody should have. That's something we're not really taught in most schools growing up. So, in order to get a complete view of history, you have to have all sides, and that kind of rounds out, especially being of African American descent. It's important us to know where we came from. And my knowledge of African American literature, I read. I mean, I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with several authors. It's like I said before. In order to get a complete picture, you have to have all the facts, and that's just one of the facets we need to have.
Okay. How do you feel about whites, how they treated African Americans from the Jim Crow era to the ending of the period?
So from Jim Crow, so what, roughly 1910. Uh, of course, I don't like it. Like I said, I didn't like it. I wasn't alive back then, but it's the period may have ended technically, but you still have institutionalized racism, which Jim Crow was just racism by the laws, and the legal system, the entire system is still slanted and biased against African American, all people of color, really, Indians, African Americans. The list goes on and on.